Hi everyone. Meet Natalie Hewitt. So we've had a little bit of a conversation prior to the show, and let's talk about, because what we wanted to really focus on here too was not the bleeding obvious, but we were going to talk about in the beginning, where you grew up, where you lived and all that sort of thing, and what your life was like then. Because we were saying about how the stigma is attached to a lot of young women and, living in Department of Housing and things like that, which is where you grew up, right?
Absolutely. So, hello everyone. I grew up in Singleton in the Hunter Valley, so not far from here, and I still live in Singleton. So it's not that bad. There's actually a lot of opportunities in that town. We actually didn't even qualify for Department of Housing for a long time. So the first home that I can remember is living with my maternal grandparents, with my mother and older brother. So we lived there at least until I was about 10, when my mum did meet a lovely young man, and he became, I guess, my first real role model as a man. But we then moved with them all still, so it was still this family unit, and we did live with my grandmother, but that was in the first home that anyone in my family had owned, and that was my grandmother.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So your grandmother owned that?
Yep, well, yeah.
So that was your...
Yeah.
Okay. So see, like you're saying now, growing up and, not many people actually owned their own home. And that was a big thing, wasn't it? To be in that sort of environment where someone's a homeowner.
And Singleton back then, I guess it's still a fairly small town, but there's a lot of industry and associated industry in that area now. But Pop was a coal miner. Prior to that, he was an undertaker. So
wow,
hadn't had much money, so he came into it, and of course you buy a house. They were also one of the ones with the first colour TV, I remember. So
did everyone visit?
Yeah,
usually the way, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it didn't seem strange to me that our whole family lived in one big bedroom in their house, because that was just what I was used to.
But I think too, like way back then, that's what we did as families. Because I live with my grandmother too, so I can remember it being like, well, there's 5 years between my uncle and I. So I can remember my mum and my grandmother sharing a double bed, and my sister being in a single bed, and that was in one room. And then in the other room, there was my sister and myself and my uncle. And we just didn't think anything of that. Like, that was just great for us, because I always thought, well, it's about family unit, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think a lot of cultures have kept that, and it's probably kept them quite close, whereas I'm not entirely sure what happened with some Australian families, but everybody seemed to separate, and community went that way as well.
Yeah, I think, young families today kind of have access to so much, where they can get all these great big housing loans, and they're in these beautiful big flashy homes and the 2 new cars and, the great landscaping, and it's like, whatever happened to the sheets on the windows? Do you remember that?
Yeah, we had sheets on windows.
And you always had your mother-in-law's old furniture and stuff. It was always, everything was passed down.
Everything was second-hand, and that's just how it was.
So life for you, like way back then. Now let's go back to, like, your father. Because he was kind of labelled the monster, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a really horrible man. I guess I didn't know that when I was little, because in my memory he'd never lived with us. So in the first house that I was talking about, I remember that he would come to visit, not often, but he was really tall. He was over, say, 6'2", and he was a former soldier, so he'd been to Vietnam. was my role model and my rock star, and I felt really privileged to grow up with him. He wasn't perfect, let me just say that.
No one is, darling.
No, but I think we were really close. We were peas in a pod. So even though, because Mum was so young, she didn't really have a life before we came along. She was still a kid, having kids. So him and I got to hang out an awful lot growing up. So as I said, even though he had, he was spoiled, I still adored him, and I thought, I'm pretty lucky that you let me tag along. So when he was diagnosed, he was actually, the first person in regional New South Wales to be diagnosed with HIV. And I remember getting the news, so it was at the Royal Newcastle, and it was shock. And of course, the computers were just starting then, the World Wide Web. It was really hard to get information, and nobody really knew much about this virus. And it was just as the hysteria was starting with that little girl over in America, Eve, that they had kicked out of preschool, and that was before the Grim Reaper ads and that type of thing. But he got sick. He got really, really sick. He actually developed shingles, and that was one of the first symptoms of it. That's when they picked it up, that he had HIV. So of course nobody knew really for sure how it was transmitted until a little bit later. So the family, we were all tested at that time just to make sure, because if you shed toothbrushes, etc., then that's a possibility. But I remember going to visit him, and we would have to put masks and whatever on. You couldn't go when you were sick at all because his immune system was just so impaired. And I just remember living our lives through his blood count and what they call T cells, so his ability to fight off any bugs, and it would be less than 10, his T cells. It was just a non-stop battle. I think when someone is ill, and I don't know if this resonates with anyone at home, that very much becomes the focus of your family unit. So of course you have a lot of hopes and dreams for them that they'll get better, and we always thought they'll find a cure. Of course they'll find a cure. There are such brilliant doctors out there. So we didn't talk about death either. We just assumed that he would get better, but he became the focus of our whole family, and he was in hospital on and off for 10 years. So he fought that virus so hard. And at that time, every country, everywhere, there was an AIDS ward. That's what they called it. So once it went from HIV to full-blown AIDS, and it really was a death sentence back then, and that was before AZT came onto the scene. But
thankfully, we have a lot now that,
thankfully,
that at least we can help some of them.
Oh, I think,
and we've got more understanding of it now.
We can now, I think, live a life, which is fantastic. So those medical breakthroughs have been incredible. And
not such a stigma attached to it either. I think, like way back then it was like, oh, don't sit on the same seat, that stigma that was attached to people like that, and hence why they became so secretive and retreated, because
it was just awful. And as I said, small town like Singleton, and when he did come back to visit, it was just one of the hardest things to see him. He was just a shell. He was a shadow of himself, just literally almost wasting away. So very much someone with end-stage cancer, terminal disease. And of course people would gossip and wonder what it was, because that seemed to be juicy. People needed to know what was going on.
So how old was he when he passed away?
He was 28.
So young, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a life unfulfilled. He never got to travel out of Australia. He did go to Adelaide once to see ABBA, his most favourite band.
Oh wow, I'd
ever.
go to Adelaide for ABBA too.
Dyed his hair pink, you'd have loved it. His shocking pink hair. But I grew up thinking he was just flamboyant. I didn't realise, of course, that he was gay. Not that it bothered me, but I just thought, my brother is so special. How great is that we can paint our nails together? But it never clicked with me, because it was just that bond.
And it was something that you didn't talk about either. You didn't need to talk about it.
No, it wasn't. And I actually had an auntie, my godmother, and her partner. So they were lesbian, and again, they were just my aunties. I had two aunties, and I didn't understand the difference. And I was spoiled. I had these women in my life, and I'd never stopped to think that it was a different situation. So it was an inclusive sort of relationship within the internal family. Yeah, but the town, it wasn't supportive back then. We did lose a lot of friends. As I said, gossip gets a hold of people.
In a small town, yes, unfortunately. anywhere really. But so then let's get on to when you met your husband. So I believe you met your husband when you were working in a bar.
Yeah, I did. So he was from Sydney, but it
Oh,
wasn't.
big timer there.
Well, it was only Blacktown.
Only.
Well,
I hope he's not watching this.
he would, say to me, "But you're a Singleton girl." I'd say, "Hey, you're from Blacktown," so I think we're pretty even there. So
to all those people that live in Blacktown, we love it.
yeah, we do love it.
We do.
Absolutely.
Thanks for your sending us Natalie's husband. Great.
It was so funny because back then I was actually going to college. So this is an admission, I didn't even finish year 10. I actually went back later and did that through TAFE, but I had such a hard time going to school. I thought I need to get out and earn some money. So I did bar work and I was underage, but I didn't look it.
But everyone used to do that.
They did. It was great.
Well, not everyone, but most of us did things. We drink, underage, and it was sensible.
Absolutely. And I knew people, so that's how I got the job.
And that's what happened
way
back then.
And I was a good worker, Bar work was something that I really clicked with. And I remember Saturday morning, this is what happened, and I'm working, and in comes this, we called him a Westie, he had the flannel shirt on, and this big beard and blonde hair, almost like Chris Hemsworth, really.
Oh,
such a
there you go,
vision.
that makes up for the rubbish we gave Blacktown.
And like our eyes just met, so...
And that was it.
And that was it, basically, and that was a long time ago, so it was before I was 18.
So before you were 18, so you had your first child at...
The day before I turned 19.
The day before you turned 19. Wow, that's pretty spectacular. So you had 3 boys?
3 boys. 3 beautiful boys. So blessed.
So Josh?
Yes.
Jacob
and Liam.
And Liam. So Jacob was your young son that suicided?
Yeah, we lost Jacob 6 years ago tomorrow. So as we call it, that's his angelversary.
So his angelversary tomorrow. Is quite strange that we're here tonight.
It is, but it's here for a reason. It's here to give a message of hope to somebody else who might be in that spot, who might be in that dark place. And I'm very much, like you, an advocate for mental health. And if I can make a difference in someone's life, then that's what I want to do. And I know that the boys are very much that way as well. Jacob, his flame just burnt so brightly. It really did. He was far too young when he passed. He was only 24 and a beautiful boy. He had such a big heart. But he was the naughtiest kid going. It's something about the second kid, and he tested every possible boundary. He could light up a room. He could walk into a room with all these old retired guys playing poker, know all their names, and they would love him, but they'd wait for him while he was outside having a ciggy or something and be like, "Where's Jacob?" And they'd forgive him because, he just had the biggest heart. People just adored him. He came into the world with these beautiful big blue eyes, wide open. He was a month overdue. He did everything in his own time when he was good and ready.
It sounds like his personality thrown through.
But that was just Jacob, and everybody that met him loved him. He has some beautiful friends, and I know that they miss him terribly as well. I know that my family does. I'm just so blessed to have been his mum. As I said, it was taken so soon. I'm sad for the opportunities that he didn't have. I'm sad that he never got to be married or have kids and experience so much himself. But I'm just so blessed that he chose me as his mum. How lucky am I to have done that? So, in some aspects, I think it was right that I found Jake when he did complete his suicide.
Did you have any indicators prior to the day? Like, we'll talk about the day, but let's go back a little bit prior to the day. Did you have any indication whatsoever?
Jake had been struggling for quite a while, and kids are pretty good at keeping things a secret. So even though we still lived together, so we'd moved into a new house just about 6 months beforehand, and he had the bedroom next to Steve and I, and Liam still lived at home. Back then, mining in particular was booming in Singleton, and Jake had almost completed his electrician apprenticeship. So from time to time, he would have to go out onto a mine site. Excuse me. So with that, of course, there came a lot of drug and alcohol testing, not just for Jake, for the whole valley. So people at that stage were trying to outsmart the system, and that's really where a lot of synthetic drugs and different things came in on the scene. And it was terribly dangerous because, as with any drug, you just don't know what's in it.
Well, they're operating machinery too.
Absolutely.
You know, and you've got to think about the people. You know, I mean, you think about them, but you also think about the people they're surrounded by.
Yeah, and on the roads, driving to and from work, they're affected, and they're affecting other people's lives. It was a massive problem, in not just Singleton, and I know certainly there are a lot of towns now like that, but with remote workers, fly in, fly out, so people particularly where they were doing long shifts, possibly prone to depression, isolation, and they had a lot of disposable income. It was almost like, you know, they're set up for one of those big storms. And that's what happened, is that when it was downtime, it was time to party. So people didn't want something that would stay in their system and would be detected. So something like marijuana will stay in for a long time. It takes a long time for the body and the fat to metabolise it. So there was a synthetic drug called chronic at that time. And
What is chronic?
it's a synthetic marijuana.
Oh, okay,
But
yeah.
it is metabolised a lot quicker. And they kept changing some of the components, the people making it. So at that stage, legislation wasn't able to catch up. And of course, they could sell them at smoke shops in different places. You could buy it in the main street, at crystal shops, at new age shops, this type of thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Gosh.
They were saying that it wasn't a drug. So as I said, back in those days, they were one step ahead until the legislation caught up with it. But the company that I worked with, they had a health division, and they were really trying to get in to do the testing and making sure that they were able to pick up some of these components just to see how dangerous it was. And the trouble with these drugs is really if you're someone that perhaps, as I said, is predisposed to depression. Jacob had ADHD, runs in our family to some degree. I know a lot of this would probably be on the spectrum to some aspect, but I definitely think that was the beginning of it, is that dependence on that particular substance. He liked to drink, the same as, unfortunately, most young Australian men his age. So we would go out after football. His social life was so important to him. But unfortunately, he lost his licence for a second time. The first time he lost it, I would take him to work, so he was an apprentice, and I would drive him down to work and pick him up, only because we lived too far for him to walk.
And how did he lose his licence? Was that
DUI. And he did it again the Christmas time. So Steve and I spent Christmas in America. That was in 2012. And we didn't know at the time till we got home. So we'd been to court for the second time, lost his licence. He actually had been using this drug at work, and so his employment was terminated, and he didn't tell us.
And he hadn't finished his apprenticeship either
He
as an
hadn't
electrician.
been indentured, so he finished his study at TAFE, but you know his boss was pretty devastated with the situation, so he didn't want to sign him off. Jacob was really, really worried because he thought, how can I go and get another job or whatnot if I don't have that piece of paper?
So is he 23 at this time?
Yeah. 24.
24, he was 24.
He was
then.
24.
That would have been devastating for a young man, you know, and okay, well, he lost his licence, and, you know, he couldn't get to work, and, you know, then he lost his job, and usually it's just a process of a couple of things that cause the depression and, you know, and the self-worth. They lose that self-worth, and, you know, and then that, I mean, he was very blessed in a way that he was living with his family, because a lot of people that are in that situation have got their own units and stuff like that, and or can't meet their mortgage payments, and, you know, everything comes crashing down a whole lot quicker. Not that it didn't for Jacob, I'm not saying that, but I can understand a young man feeling that down when everything's gone wrong for him that way. And then, did he talk to you guys about how he was feeling, or?
Not a lot. He very much withdrew. So for a little while he kept up a pretense, pretending to go to work until we knew what had happened.
Oh, he was pretending to
He
go
was
to work.
pretending to go to work. Yeah. So that was hard. But he did open up to my husband, to Steve, and Steve did take him to the doctor. He didn't get to start his antidepressants. He was booked in with Headspace, but didn't get to the appointment either. Steve would actually give him a list of jobs, so we knew that his self-worth had been, pretty low. But he seemed to be coming good. This is a really familiar story. He seemed to be coming good. And he had jobs that he would do around the yard, cut down trees for us, all sorts of things. And he would be proud, saying, "Look, Dad, I finished that for you. I've done this." He fixed our spa bath, because all sorts of things when you get a new house, they don't disclose to you. But he was so proud. He helped rewire Pop's kitchen for him, although I think he forgot to turn the freezer back on. But he was still proud that he was able to do that. I don't think we'll ever really know what happened that night. It was actually after one of the State of Origin games. He went out as he would, didn't have much money. I was at work. I spoke to him on the phone before he went, and he had plans for that coming weekend to help one of his mates move house. The weekend before, him and Steve had actually pulled over this massive tree in our yard that was in danger of falling on the house. So you can imagine them like plotting this whole thing and cutting it with the chainsaw and which direction it would have to fall in. And we've got pictures of them sort of standing there like, "Look what we've done." He was really proud of the work that he'd done. So I think he was just pretending. I really do. But it was that night that he came home after State of Origin. And it was cold. So yeah, it was this time of year, of course. And his younger brother was at home, Liam. And he said that Jake did seem agitated. So we don't know if he had some sort of discussion at the pub. And you know what, we never asked his friends. His friends lost him. And nothing would have been gained from us asking them. And I know that's really hard because a lot of parents, of course, want answers. We didn't want to put them through any more. We really didn't. And Jake was an impulsive kid. So it was unfortunate the same ropes that him and Stephen had used to bring that tree down were the ropes that he took his life with. And that was something, that my husband really struggled with. He really felt guilty for it.
Because of the ropes.
Because of the ropes, and just he said Jake had promised me that he wouldn't do anything silly. He promised me. And he said, I've let you down. So Steve was so worried that I would blame him. And
That's sad.
No, of course not. Yeah.
So what happened? It was the next morning, wasn't it, when you were going to work?
Yeah, it was the next morning. I think it would have been Thursday morning. And it was foggy. Foggy that morning, so it was about 8:30. And the car was parked and I have to reverse and start to go down the driveway. And something caught my vision on this side, on the left-hand side. And I saw Jake, but it was not unusual to find him in silly poses or circumstances when he would drink and just fall asleep. That was just him, that was just his personality. So when I first saw him, I thought, what's he doing outside in the cold, Why is he hunched like that? So it did take that minute, which seemed like an eternity, for it to register what I was seeing. And, I'd left the car on and the car door and just jumped out to him. And that's when I realised he was gone.
He'd hung himself in the tree.
Yeah.
Wow. What happened like straight after that? Was that a big blur to you?
No, I remember the details like they're in slow motion. And I think one of the main differences between Jacob and myself, I had a lot of trauma growing up in my family. And in my life, I've built up a lot of resilience over the years. but I managed to have some downtime in between, and I managed to have some techniques to cope with things. Everything happened, as you said, on top of each other with Jake, so it was too much. So for me, I tried to normalise the situation when I found him. I screamed, and the neighbours heard. So we were on a rural property, but they heard, and they were driving in. But by that stage, I'd already rang emergency, and I think I'd only ever rang it once in my life, 000, so it wasn't a number I was familiar with. And I rang 911 instead, because obviously I've been watching television and movies, but it does divert to 000.
And that trauma too can make you do silly things.
Yeah, it's that memory. It's where you're operating from.
So that's good to know that if you do make that mistake, 911, that it does go to 000.
Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Because that's kind of like embedded in your mind, isn't it? That 911.
It is. We hear it everywhere rather than that 000. And the emergency services were just amazing. It was very obvious there were no signs of life, and they gave me permission. So by then the neighbour had come over, and she had a young apprentice, a young boy with her. But they'd given me permission on the phone to be able to cut Jacob down. So we found a saw, and we did that, and I was forever grateful to that young boy, and I can't remember his name. And I just hope that he's okay. I hope that he would realise the difference that he made to me that day. He was such a kind young man.
Have you never spoken to him?
No, and that's what I mean. I hope that he was okay.
Is he a neighbour of yours?
No, he was an apprentice to a neighbour. So he was just there that morning for whatever reason with her. Normally it just would have been the neighbour herself. So her and the lady from across the road, they both came. But what happened where I was talking about being on automatic pilot and just frozen in time basically, when the ambulance or the paramedics arrived, I had to keep asking people their names, and because I wanted to connect with them and I wanted to thank them, because I was in shock. But it was really important for me that they knew I really appreciated them being there. And again, this poor young boy, he went in the house to wake up Liam, so Liam was asleep in the bedroom. So you can imagine poor Liam, he would have had such a fright with, who is this kid in my bedroom? And he just said, Liam, you need to come outside. So normally, Liam sleeps like with a baseball bat under his bed, so he's lucky he didn't clock this kid. But that was so heartbreaking then to see Liam and his reaction, and he was physically ill. But just the emergency services were amazing. The detectives, when they came that day, so they checked out Jacob's bedroom and his car, just looking for any notes. They were amazing. They were absolutely amazing. And they followed me up for 6 months.
That's fantastic.
They were just brilliant.
That is fantastic, though, that they did that. Like, that's wonderful. That's a wonderful service.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it, like, to do that? Because you don't think about that, but it is after the event. It's like, I've found many times it's not when the funeral's on, it's after the funeral that you need those people to call in and make sure you're okay. And we're talking about funerals, and it's just something that just jogged my little memory, and that is, you said that there was to be no black at the funeral. So what did all his mates do? Something about jerseys or...
Yeah, and I looked for a photo. I could only see one front on, but all of the kids came to the house that following weekend, all in shock. And I said to them, just as I've explained to you, we all loved Jake. Jake was colour. Jake loved life. So please don't feel that you need to just wear black and be sombre. So the girls and whatnot, we all wore a pretty colour and whatever, but all of his mates, and there must have been at least 50, maybe more, they all had Panthers jerseys made up because he was a Mad Panther supporter. And they all had their nicknames on the back because he gave nicknames to everybody and none of them made sense, but that was just the sort of kid that he was. So he was, you know, Huey, but it was just the most beautiful gesture, because I'd seen one or two, this was in the golf clubs, Steve's favourite place, and I thought, why have these kids got the same jersey on? And then I've looked, and it was just a sea of Panthers jerseys, and we do have a photo somewhere with them, with all the backs there, and they gave one each to Josh and to Liam, and of course when we said goodbye to Jake, we put his jersey in with him. That just meant so much, and actually the Panthers had heard about that, and they gave us a signed jersey from the team.
Oh, wow.
Because they were doing so much work as well with young men in the community and mental health. So that just blew us away. It was just such a touching thing, and it was through one of Liam's friends, beautiful young girl, that sort of reached out to the team. I think we just been genuinely overwhelmed and surprised by how much people have cared. In our community in Singleton, I had people that would come up to me, just in the shopping centre, mums in particular, and just hug me. Because, you know, we had our struggles, but we're an average loving family, really close family. And I think that showed if it could happen to us, it could happen to anybody. And that's pretty scary.
So very true, isn't it?
Mm.
And I mean, I'll be interviewing your son in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
In relation to what he's doing with mental health, with the uni. And that's just his side, his story, which will be quite incredible. So, you know, join in and hear his story. And, you know, like, it's all about young men and their mental health, isn't it? You know, that's why I tell the stories. That, you know, there's just so much out there. There's so much going on out there. And like we say, half the time, you don't know about it. You've got no idea. They'll carry on regardless. They'll be their happy selves. You know, maybe it's time that you just go and ask your children, are you okay? Like, just say that to them every now and then, and just try and catch up with them about, you know, like what they're doing in their lives, and do they need help in any areas? And I mean, we as mothers, we have got this most amazing built-in intuitive kind of feeling that we usually pick up on something. You know, it's about time we listen to it, because it's been given to us for a very good reason. So, you know, if you've got those intuitive kind of feelings about anyone in your family, you know, use them and just go up to them and ask them if they're okay. Or your neighbour, just ask if they're okay. Just once a month, you know, ask if someone's okay. Because very simple words that could just mean so much to anyone out there. And, you know, like, each and every week I ask my guests to give a message of hope, because I know probably now 4 people at least watching tonight that have been through what you've been through, and one in particular that's going through it right now. So if you were to talk to that person, what would you say to them right now?
I would say that you are loved and you do matter, and there is always someone out there, someone who will care for you. So please reach out, please talk to somebody. The world's a better place because you're in it, and you really need to believe that. So please reach out and talk and love life. It is a miracle. It's a remarkable thing. We just need to support each other, and we really need to connect and care. And you are always better off, if you're not sure, as Kelly said, asking someone. You're better off offending them, or if they get a little bit short with you, you just need to ask them. If they're not quite themselves, are you okay? And just be persistent about it. Because people are just living battles every day that we don't know about.
That's right. And then, you know, the thing is, they may not want to tell you, but it's just the fact that someone has asked them. That might have been the very first time anyone has said anything like that to them.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're going through, like you're saying, they're going through their own battle right now, and no one has even asked, like, how many times do you hear now of, neighbours and everything passing away and people not finding them for days. And, you know, it's about, we've lost the connection with community. We really have. I mean, we don't operate like small villages anymore like we once did, you know. I remember growing up and everyone knew everyone in the street. You know, you knew where all your friends lived. No one locked their doors. You know, on the way home from school, if it was a hot day, you popped into Mrs. Such and Such. You'd always have a cold drink, you know, or something for you. Like, it's just so different now. People are not taking the time to get to know the people because I think we're all too busy. It's like, it's that, you know, so many demands on us as individuals that we forget to, you know, stop and smell the roses.
We do. We've really lost that ability. We're so busy being busy.
Busy being busy. So true. You know, like these, you know, today, that's what I'm saying, you know, okay, here's a challenge. This week, I want everyone that's watching this show, I want you once this week to go to a neighbour and say hi. That's all you have to do. Say hi. Smell their roses in their garden. Take the time, you know, and, you know, if you see them out the letterbox getting their mail, I mean, does anyone get mail these days? Like, I mean, no, we do. I'm an old-fashioned girl. I love writing letters. But, you know, like if you see someone at the mailbox, don't be afraid to say hello, how you going? You know, it's just so important these days. And how many times now in life do we not even know our neighbours like 3 houses up?
True.
And like I said, once upon a time, we used to know everybody in the whole street. And everyone went to that local school together and everyone knew everyone. And the guy that owned the local store, you know, knew everybody and his wife knew everyone. And, you know, it's not like that now. So it's about time that we changed and became community focused. And, you know, just share the love and share the want to say hello and just make sure that everyone's okay. You know, I think it's so important to just do that and to check up on our kids, to check up on our adult children and just go and ask them, are you okay, mate? Like, I know they're probably going to think I'm crazy, but, like, you know, that's what you say. At the risk of offending someone,
Absolutely.
Don't worry about that bit. Because the thing is that you're going to ask them if they're okay. And that's what I want everyone to do this week. Once. Just ask one person. Now, if we all did that and it just kept continuing, you know, like, did you see that show, Pay It Forward?
Yeah.
Well, there's a perfect story.
Absolutely.
Isn't there? Like, if you've seen Pay It Forward and if you haven't, you have got to watch it. You must get it and watch it. Pay It Forward. There's a lesson there for everyone. You know, it's just so beautiful to be a part of everything, and it just takes one person to do something quite beautiful that just keeps extending into something that's just so enormously awesome, you know, just by one little action. You know, it could change the whole world. So, we haven't got our little producer to push the stop button. I think he's got involved in something upstairs. So, we're going like overtime, but you know, I'm going to get up and push the stop button and we're going to sack him for sure. Like, you know, I think that just has to be said here and now. I've been picking on him each and every week, but, you know, right now, that's the way it is. So I'm going to get up and I'm going to turn this off and I'm going to say goodnight to each and every one of you. So do you want to leave with a little something that you want to say, or is there a particular service that you want to thank, or is there a particular service that you want to mention that maybe people don't know about it? I think that'd be, you know, is there a mental health service that you know of that you'd like to tell people about, or at least give a phone number, or...
I'm not prepared, but certainly, hopefully most people do know about Lifeline. I can tell you that they were amazing for me, and I actually did attend the Speakers Bureau. Josh is working with, I think it's called Roses in the Ocean at the moment. So there are some fantastic organisations out there, beautiful people who really want to make a difference. And it is about having that discussion, that conversation with somebody and helping to put them at ease. And then people like myself and Josh, we have both the lived experience of depression but also with suicide. is making sure that we do take that stigma out of it. So talking with people and just making a difference, absolutely. And I think that's what I'm determined to do. In particular, the last few years, I don't sit on the sidelines anymore. I'm out there and I'm living the best life that I can. I owe it to myself. I owe it to Jake, and I forgot to show you. I know we're out of time. It's my little Wonder Woman.
Oh.
So I've used her a lot. She's my superhero, and I have my little T-shirt on today. I'm fierce.
Oh, let's show us that fierce.
So fierce.
I hope you can see that fierce Wonder Woman. Yeah.
So there's been times that I've had to summon her because this is bigger than me. It's bigger than most of us.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's the other thing. We've got to know that situation is okay. We don't have to be this amazing, awesome person all the time. There are times when all of us, you know, need to crack. You know, or we need to... Look, I have pajama days because I just need to unwind. Things have got me down, so much is happening in my life, and I just have a pajama day where I just spend the whole day in my pajamas.
It's the best day.
It is. Like, people just don't get that. If you haven't had a pajama day, you've just got to do it. I think we should have a national pajama day.
Absolutely, we should.
I think we should start... That's
Well, they have... is it Stress Down Day, Lifeline?
Oh, yeah, dress down,
Dress
yes.
Down Day. So I have done that before at my former job, and we did wear pajamas. Yeah. But
All right, let's...
keep those campaigns up. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. All those campaigns are awesome. Eventually, there'll be something on every single day of the year. So, you know, you've got something to look forward to every single day and something to celebrate.
Absolutely.
So, this is from Wonder Woman, and we're saying good night, and know that every person in the world is valued and every person is loved. And if you're going through a hard time right now in life, know that there are people out there to help you, like Lifeline, all other organisations. Ring Lifeline and get other organisations that you can contact that are in particular with what you're going through. So, you know, it's good night from all of us, and I'm just going to make the quick stage left exit to turn the button off if you want to hold her and focus on her, not me, focus on that. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you for supporting me and my dream, and know that in life that you're going to be okay. Thumbs up, okay. Hold that thumbs up, Natalie. Can you do that? Thumbs up. Wonder Woman's doing thumbs up.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.